So, alien invasions. The way they usually go is aliens attack us, unprovoked, and we give them a warm welcome in return.
Welcome to Earth.
We take a few hits,
They blew up Congress!
though we send them packing after a short war. But what if it wasn't so quick and easy, and instead the aliens won, took over the planet for like 20 years, and also created a massive human-alien hybrid army to enforce their rule? And only after a long bloody resistance effort led by a group called Xcom did we finally take down the powerful elder aliens controlling that large hybrid alien army and free the planet. Though it turns out a lot of those enemy forces only did the elders' bidding because of mind control and constant propaganda since they were born. Also in the mix with these aliens who were taken advantage of are some true believers still loyal to the ideas of the elders that we'll have to deal with somehow. All of this is definitely going to lead to a messy situation after the war, where we can't just get rid of the aliens since most were also victims of our previous elder overlords. So the only viable option would be to try to all work together and rebuild, which means accepting aliens on the team. And also getting past some of the questionable things done during the occupation, like food.
If you've been to Burger Palace, you know we've had the same great taste since the occupation. But how?
This is the general setup to Xcom Chimera Squad, a spin-off to the mainline Xcom games made by Firaxis that takes place 5 years after winning the war in Xcom 2. Though some of you watching might still be stuck in the 1,000 years it takes to finish the long war mod for that game, but you'll get you eventually. So one of the main things that sets Chimera Squad apart from other Xcom games is now you get to control some of the aliens you previously fought against. Some of which include one of those tall basketball player sectoids with mind control powers, whose name is Verge. They can smile less menacingly now. Also an Australian human-alien hybrid called Zephyr, who's really mobile and good at punching stuff to death. And of course, everyone's favourite, a snake lady who's appropriately named Talk. She's a bit grumpy, but loves to give free hugs, that are only slightly lethal. She also maybe gets a little too excited when taking out bad guys.
Hostile no longer exists!
Hey, at least she's fighting on our side now. The other thing that sets this game apart from other XCOM games is the turn order, which I'll get into more detail about later. Also, the stakes and difficulty are not so high this time, you're just trying to save one city and not the entire planet. Which is actually a little similar to another older XCOM game called XCOM Apocalypse, where you're also trying to save a city. Though, unlike those older games and XCOM 2, this one's difficulty isn't trying to break you. This time it's more like a pleasant walk in the park with some gunfire in the distance compared to those games. Which, if you have played before, maybe set this game's difficulty to expert to keep things a little challenging. Since this game is more for newcomers to XCOM than veterans from previous games. Though I still think if you have played some XCOM games before this, you will still have some fun. It gets you to think a little differently when it comes to tactics, and is way less trauma-inducing. So the reason for this game being this way is that coming off of making XCOM 2, the developers wanted to try something different with the XCOM formula, which I think is a good thing since changing things up and experimenting helped a lot with bringing XCOM and turn-based tactical games to a newer generation of players, and has influenced a lot of the new turn-based tactical games coming out. But I also think Firaxis were maybe a little wary of changing things up too much, as XCOM 2 had made what I feel were some good changes that forced us to play more aggressive. Though they did get a bit of pushback on that, which I understand. It is really stressful playing through XCOM 2 at times. And just getting the formula right in the first place with XCOM Enemy Unknown was a struggle for many years. Maybe because of all of that, they were a little unsure of what direction to take for future games. So I can understand the logic of testing the waters with a small spin-off game that doesn't have the huge pressure of being a numbered sequel, that they could use to explore different ways to play an XCOM game while reusing a lot of the stuff they had already made for XCOM 2, which would make it quicker and easier to make with a smaller budget and see how people react. Like when I first saw the trailers for this game, I wasn't sure what to make of it. At the time I was more in the mindset of, oh, it's been a while since XCOM 2, that probably means they've been working on XCOM 3, right? So what's up with this game then? I mean, I did like the idea of getting to play with alien units, and some of you really like the idea of playing with one particular alien compared to the others, which I can tell from just the difference in view numbers for videos showing off the characters. I won't judge, I'm just here taking notes. But other aspects of the game I was not so sure about, like no randomly generated soldiers and instead you can only pick from these set characters. Also there's a new turn order thing now, and the tone of the game is not as grim as before. These aren't fundamentally bad or good changes, it's just not what I was expecting. Like visually the games have gone from a Saturday morning cartoon vibe to a grim near future dystopia. And now you have Chimera Squad going for like a comic book look, which at first I wasn't too hot on, but the more I played the game I actually started to like it. It makes sense to me at least, since you still get a bit of that Saturday morning cartoon feeling from XCOM Enemy Unknown, and it does suit the tone of a group of unique heroes trying to save a city. Also, it's a bit of a callback to the original XCOM game that had an action comic book vibe going in its intro. Keeping cutscenes and characters chatting with each other in 2D was probably also easier to implement than doing fully 3D cutscenes from previous games. It's a trade-off, but it works mostly. Though there are some issues with them cutting corners to make this game, like the descriptions in the UI being a bit too simplified and some other visual bugs. Like UI-wise, there is a lack of important details at times when upgrading a character's abilities. To me, in a tactics-based game, I would like to know the exact amount an upgrade does to a damage ability, not just a vague description saying more damage. Also, I know I haven't brought up visual bugs a lot in my previous XCOM reviews, and my rationale for that is, yeah, it's a problem, but for me at least, and this is very subjective, they haven't happened so often that it takes away from the experience for me. And making games is really hard, so I don't want to rag on devs for minor stuff. But in Xcom Chimera Squad, the visual problems were in nearly every mission, like when making a move, characters would teleport to the edge of the map and then come back to the right position, and during breaches the viewer gets stuck on an agent you'd just taken a shot with and not move to the next agent's perspective. Like, you can still choose all the abilities and stuff for the agent, but it was annoying. It also feels like they reduced the amount of times the camera would switch to a ground view of the action when you or an enemy took a shot. I can understand some players getting annoyed with that on every turn, but I liked it when it did that. It gave a bit of spectacle and drama to the action playing out. An option in the menus on how often that could happen would be nice. Other games have done it. Sound-wise, the music is pretty good, nothing spectacular, but it's solid. It suits the vibe playing out in missions. And I did like the chilled track that plays back at base while I was doing strategic stuff. I mean, it is a letdown when they use the same music for the pre-mission loadout menu, like there's no excitement or dread or build up for going on a dangerous mission like in previous games, just the same looped based music. And it's not like there's no music in the game they could use, there was a track that I think would have fit the loadout screen pretty well. That kind of fits the vibe, right? Like, I get that the stakes aren't as high and the danger is less in this game, but I like getting amped for a mission. It's a small nitpick, but to me it's a step down from previous games where little details and small touches like that added to the experience. Speaking of which, another thing that's missing is character customization for your squad members, like you can change the shirt color they wear and sometimes it affects their pants too, though this is all you're getting. And don't expect any visual changes when you get better armor either, this is how the squad looks from start to finish. Like, the only visual changes I can think of for characters is equipping epic weapons, which isn't much. The lack of customization is probably because of a combination of this game being on a smaller budget and that they would have had to make a lot of the stuff from scratch for all the alien body types. It's disappointing, but I can understand why it isn't there. The trade-off is though, you can use alien and human squad members who all have unique abilities. That you get to tweak a little as they level up, and they also all have backstories with their own distinct personalities. Compared to previous games where you got randomized, almost blank slate characters. That was surprisingly easy to get attached to because of how long it took to level them up to get powerful skills. Which made them very valuable the further you got into the game, since one bad mission could add them to the memorial wall. It was also pretty easy just to make up stories around these characters as you went through the game. Now, going into Chimera Squad, I wasn't sure about these character changes because to me one of the main things I liked about XCOM games was getting attached to those goofy auto-generated squad members. And with them making set-in-stone characters, there's more of a chance to mess that up. The writing needs to be good and the voice acting needs to be at least interesting. Like, whatever you come up with in your head about your random squad members in XCOM 1 and 2 is going to be tailored to you automatically. So they're always going to be interesting to you. It's like in horror movies when they obscure the monster in the shadows, you'll always imagine the most scary thing to you personally. So did they mess it up with Chimera Squad? Nah, these goofballs are pretty okay. Some of them I like more than others though. Whisper isn't technically an agent, but he's pretty okay being the mission control guy in the chair. He is a little overly friendly and a bit of a dork and kinda gets picked on by the other agents a bit, like they literally steal his lunch sometimes.
Where?
Where did I see the contents of your unmarked takeout container?
Yes. Wait.
On the end of my fork.
No.
The actual agents themselves have solid characters, like Terminal is class clown always making jokes, though that's masking a bit of melancholy she has. Godmother is that classic serious veteran type who's seen it all but cares about the squad. Verge is a professional with a history he wants to make amends for, and he has an odd sense of humor.
You find me unsettling.
I do now.
Ah,
Man, you have the weirdest jokes.
And Claymore is a self-taught explosive expert from the war who's good-natured and likes puns.
Security feed shows a bunch of sacred coil ahead of you. That's a lot of pipes, so careful where you shoot.
It sounds like a high-pressure situation.
Claymore...
I have no regrets.
He's pretty fun. The rest are fine too, but by far the most interesting character is Torque. Yes, the snake lady. And no, I'm not biased, you people are biased, as I showed earlier with clear and irrefutable evidence. So don't at me, I'm giving you all what you want apparently. But apart from her just being a snake lady, what makes her compelling is she used to be one of those Advent snake ladies who hunted your soldiers in XCOM 2. And while she is making an effort to change, she does pretty much act like you probably expect them to be.
That got their attention. Grey Phoenix is moving out, into the atrium.
I really want to knock someone over the edge.
For the last time. No.
I said I wanted to. I didn't say I was gonna do it.
Yeah, she's very much a work in progress and has a lot of reformed bad guy Vegeta vibes going.
Don't let them escape.
Let's break some ankles.
Torque.
What? Ankles heal, don't they?
Also, Torque doesn't consider herself to be an alien because she was technically born on Earth.
I never thought I would be working for Xcom.
Yeah, I didn't think they'd let an off-worlder join the team.
Torque, you are an off-worlder.
I'm from New Arctic. I am, by definition, an Earthling.
With fangs and sacs of venomous bile.
What can I say? Some Earthlings are hatched lucky.
But what is also interesting is the way she joined XCOM, which is via your boss in the game, Director Kelly, who happens to be the same Jane Kelly who survived your first mission in XCOM 2. And if they managed to live long enough, probably became one of your first veterans. Jane formed a bond with Torque while she was sort of out on probation training rookies, which was a little awkward because this one time when they were having a very sincere chat with each other about Torque having trouble getting along with other squad members, it unintentionally reminded me of a specific armor I had Jane wearing in my last playthrough of XCOM 2.
I don't know what I mean.
Off the field. With the others?
Yes. I don't...
Torque, you can do this. I believe in you.
But why?
Because you remind me of who I used to be.
You had fangs?
I know nothing about the Geneva Conventions, but I'm pretty sure wearing the skin of your enemies is a big no-no. Look, we all did some war crimes during XCOM 2, it's time to move forward and... Wait, don't show the post! The character interactions and radio stuff you hear as you play through the game are good at giving a glimpse at what the world is like now and the quirks of your squad. Also, the callouts while you're out of missions help a bit with that too, like Torque not liking Terminal's heal drones, since in the war they were probably considered dangerous by Advent. It all helps for getting a feel for the squad. The thing though that is a bit odd to me about this game is we don't play as anyone in the story. Like in previous games we were the commander, but here we're kinda just an omnipresent being controlling stuff. Unless, are we playing as Whisper? I don't think we are. I'd have mixed feelings about that if we were.
No.
It's kind of a missed opportunity since if there was a player character, you could use them to get to know the individuals of the squad with a chat now and again. Or like the game Battletech does, where you'd have an event pop up where one of your team members come to you and you'd have to make some choices regarding help or advice. That could maybe have an effect on their performance. I wonder if the lack of a player character was something just not thought about, or just something they didn't think was needed, or maybe would have taken too long to put in. I mean, I think most players of this game won't notice there's no player character. Maybe I'm the weird one for noticing. But enough about that, let's get into the gameplay. While this game is sort of similar to previous games, there are changes that give the combat a different feel and flow. Mission maps are more confined, so you don't need to search out groups of bad guys. Instead, you have a set amount of encounters, which depending on the mission can range from 1 to 3. Also, the encounters are broken up via breaches, where you get to choose entry points with different pros and cons. Where you can use one-time gadgets per mission to grant a slight advantage, like the holo scanners that give an aim bonus on enemies, or medipatches that will heal squad members at an entry point. Then once you breach, you get first shot at the enemy with your entire squad, where you've got to make some tricky choices. Like you could damage all the enemies a little bit and that will make them easier to take down once the actual fight starts. Or you could focus down one enemy that looks really dangerous, then you don't have to deal with them later. And it's hardly ever going to be an easy choice to make since there will usually be more than one really dangerous enemy and numerous weaker ones that you'll want to reduce the numbers of. It's usually a good idea to get rid of the bad guys who do AoE damage or are heavy hitters. But the most important ones to focus on are the ones that can mind control or stun or just basically incapacitate your squad members. Since it takes away a turn to do anything, which is very bad as turn order is super important in this game, but I'll get into that in a bit. Though while you're making choices on who to shoot during a breach, you also need to take into account any aggressive enemies enemies that will fire on you instantly once combat starts. They can miss, but not always, so take your chances. This all makes breaches seem like they are the super equation of choosing the least worst outcome, but it's not so bad. You get a feel for it pretty quickly on who you should target first, depending on what you think their danger level is. It's an interesting change from XCOM 2 since the action on missions feel more instant now and you don't need to look for it or set up ambushes. Another thing with breaches is certain squad members will have abilities you can use during a breach. Some are one-time use per mission and others you can use in every encounter. These were a bit of a mixed bag for me. A couple are really useful and I kept using through the whole campaign, like Godmother's Alpha Strike, which lets her take a shot but also lets her take a turn early in a fight with a bonus action on her first move. It is a once per mission ability, but it is good to use to give an advantage in a tough encounter. Then there's Verge's Levitation, which is sort of useful. It basically lifts an enemy up and makes them an easier target and removes their aggressive stance. You can also use it for every breach in a mission. The problem is Verge can't take a shot while doing this, so you give up doing any damage on his turn so that your other teammates will have more of a chance on theirs. Like, it's great in theory, but in practice to me most of the time it felt better to just take a shot with Verge instead of doing the levitate thing. It always felt like a waste of a turn if I did no damage. Also, if the enemy's dead, it doesn't matter how aggressive they are. So I barely ever used it. It felt a bit too weak when I could just rather take a shot. They maybe could have made it a bit more powerful, like letting Verge take a shot while using it, but just make it a once per mission ability like Godmother's Alpha Strike. Or just keep it mostly the same and just give it like a stun or small damage element to it, because as it is, there's not much incentive to use it. A few of the other squad members' abilities also feel weak, like Cherub's Phalanx and Shelter's Dazzle. Though the other squad member abilities are pretty good. They do less damage than a regular shot, but will more likely hit or be a 100% chance to hit. Those are pretty valuable when it comes to XCOM. Like Blue Blood's Lancer Shot, which ignores cover, or Viper's Toxic Greeting, which does low damage but poisons the enemy, who will keep taking damage from it for a few turns. And if the enemy has low health, can kill them. That mostly covers breaching. It's kinda like setting up ambushes in XCOM 2, but without you having to set it up with overwatches, and you get some more control and choices to make. I liked it. It felt good through the campaign. It gave that feeling I was making tough choices on what enemies to focus on, and when to use those more powerful once a mission abilities. Though there were a few rare occasions where the entry points, pros and cons were duplicated, which doesn't make for an interesting choice. And like I mentioned before, some of those abilities needed a little more time in the oven. The actual fighting is where the big differences show up, as each side doesn't take a turn like in previous games, but now each individual takes a turn. Which means you need to focus on this turn order list in the corner and think ahead to get an advantage. Because if you control this, you will win nearly every fight. And this starts when you breach, as the order you select your squad in will determine which one of them go first in a fight. And you don't have to worry about which entry point is first, as you can change the order with these arrows next to them. What you do need to think about is your squad's abilities, since some of them are way better early in a fight than others. Especially ones that move enemies down the turn order, or even better take the turn away, or move one of your team members up the order. Which if you get right, you can get rid of a lot of enemies before they can even get a shot off on you. Like Terminal is great to start a fight with, as once she's leveled up a bit, her pin down ability can force an enemy to take their turn later, and her cooperation one can give a bonus action immediately to one of your squad members. She is a bit terrible at taking shots though. But I can forgive that for all those great abilities, and she is the only dedicated healer in the game. Another good way to take an enemy out of a fight is to use Torque's Bind, which will hold an enemy in place and stop them from taking a turn while doing 2 points of damage. It can also be upgraded to do 5 damage each turn she holds it, which is great, like guaranteed decent damage and you stop the enemy from taking a turn. That's a killer combo. She's also pretty good with her tongue. She can yank enemies closer to her with it, Scorpion style, catchphrase and all.
Get over here!
Another squad member that can also move enemies to an easier to hit position and even delay their turn is Shelter with his upgraded relocate ability, which swaps positions with an enemy. Shelter starts out weak but gets some really strong abilities once leveled up. Like his most powerful ability is Fracture that can only be used once a mission, but it makes a psionic clone of himself that can use relocate and his Soulfire damage ability. Also, you can choose an upgrade that makes Soulfire steal health, which the clone can use too. So it's kind of like a self-healing decoy that also does damage and delays enemy turns. That's extremely useful in this game. Then you get characters that don't delay turns but have some great damage abilities like Blue Blood and Claymore. Blue Blood is basically the sharpshooter class from XCOM 2 minus the sniper rifle, which you'd think would lower his damage output, but he can take multiple shots per turn. And has a phase launch ability that shoots through cover and can hit multiple targets, which can be upgraded to increase the damage as the shot goes through more enemies. Oh, and also once he's at max level, he can use the face-off ability once a mission, which is as powerful as it was in XCOM 2.
Just lucky, I guess. Not over yet. Did you see that?
I could do better.
And then there's Claymore, whose speciality is using my favorite item in XCOM games, grenades. With the right setup, he can be devastating. Like, his shrapnel ability is pretty fun. It's a delayed grenade that he can throw and he or anyone on your team can trigger by taking a shot at. It only has a cooldown, so you can use it multiple times in an encounter. Then he's got the improvised explosive ability, which lets him use equipped grenades once every encounter. So you don't need to save that plasma grenade for special occasions. Now every encounter can be a bit of a fireworks show. Also, he gets a sticky grenade that if he throws on an enemy will panic them and send them running, usually to one of their friends, with explosive results. It's always entertaining to watch. This is all great, but there are some issues with squad members and abilities. A few of them feel okay at the start, but even though they get better abilities as they level up, they don't keep up with the rest. Like Verge and Cherub. By the mid game they feel like they fall off. They are a bit inconsistent and need a little too much setup to be effective compared to other squad members' abilities that feel immediate and pack more punch. Which in a game that's encouraging you to remove enemies from the turn order as quick as possible or at least delay their turns is going to be noticeable. Like Verge needs to link to enemy mines via his neural network using his abilities like Stupor and Battle Madness, which is fine. His network thingy gives him some nice buffs and access to other abilities. But Stupor, which is one of the setup abilities, is supposed to stun the enemy, but it's a bit inconsistent as it'll either take 1 or 2 moves away from the enemy. If it's 2 moves, then they won't do anything on their turn. But if it's 1, then they won't move, but they will take a shot at you. Which feels like the Stupor ability didn't work and was a waste to use. And Battle Madness is better, but you need to be careful with it as it makes the enemy go berserk, which will make them fire on anyone close to them, and not just the enemy, but any of your squad members too. This inconsistency will make it so you will likely pick other squad members for missions with more dependable abilities. Verge does get better abilities like Mindflay and Puppeteer, but they all rely on the setup of that whole neural network gimmick, which as we just went over doesn't always feel great to actually set up. Cherub also falls off as the game goes on. He sets up a kinetic shield on himself or one of your squad and can build up charges as they get destroyed, which feeds into his shield bash ability to do more damage with a melee attack. This is fine early on, but feels too defensive when you could pick a squad member that can dish out damage while stopping an enemy from taking a turn. It always feels better to stop an enemy from taking a shot at you than trying to reduce it or avoid it. As they say, prevention is better than cure. So again, past the midpoint of the game, Cherub along with Verge are probably going to be sitting back at base a lot of the time. Like, the game does encourage you to mix your squad up by using scars, which is battle trauma that one of your team will pick up if they take too much damage on a mission and start bleeding out. It will reduce their stats if not sorted out, though you can remove it by sending them into training for 2 days. Another way they try to get you to take out a different team is also with training, as you can get some nice passive bonus skills and buffs if you send an agent in there for a few days. The combo of these did get me to mix up my team now and again and try something different. But I still had my favorite team setup for most of the game, while the rest of the team was back at base doing busy work, since in this game you don't have scientists and engineers to do research and build stuff for the team. Your agents are doing double duty and doing that too. You can also send agents on spec op missions that can get you resources, so there's always something for off-duty squad members to do. The general base management of the game is fine. It's the typical XCOM recipe where you're using limited resources the best you can, with intel being the most important, as getting that leads to all the other resources you need to run things. You will initially get intel as a reward from missions if you subdue enemies instead of killing them, though you only need to subdue 5 enemies to get a 100% chance to get the intel reward instead of like a small amount of intel per enemy, which tends to result in you not caring about the rest and just mowing them down. Maybe not the best way to set up incentives in a game. But back to the base stuff. Getting enough intel will let you invest in field teams that will give you other resources on a constant weekly basis that you can use for researching upgrades or buying new gear. Though you will still need intel for the best stuff, and that you'll get at the scavengers market, which appears from time to time. It's got old favorites in it like the frag grenade and some epic weapons that give bonus abilities to the user. Also, if you see this thing called a motile inducer, buy it. If you use it on an ally, it will immediately give them 2 actions. It's like giving them an instant free turn. Super useful. The other base management stuff is generally okay. It feels more like busy work than having tricky choices to make, and wasn't that engaging to me. Like, there's a lot less tension running the show this time around, as this game's version of the Avatar progress bar, the unrest and anarchy meters, that while pushing you to sort out problems at a good pace, isn't as stress inducing. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I think it's going to be very subjective depending on how you felt about XCOM 2. Me personally, I was fine with it, but maybe you like the world bearing down on you constantly. It's pretty easy to manage unrest by doing missions and using field team abilities that get stronger with more teams you assign to a district and leveling them up. And you can even get some extra rewards from some of the field team abilities. Once you get a hang of using all this stuff, it's fairly easy to keep the anarchy bar from ever getting scary. Like, the game at points in the story will raise unrest and anarchy, but it's very manageable. So base management isn't bad, but it's not great either. It's kind of just doing its thing. What I enjoyed most in the game was the combat, which because of the unique characters and their abilities kept things interesting. Like using an agent's ability to move an enemy, which can trigger another agent's overwatch, is fun. And thinking ahead how to take advantage of the turn order using all the skills and equipment you have is a cool tactical puzzle. Also, there's a certain kind of satisfaction when using the delayed damage of poison, acid and fire, which can lead to situations where it might be the enemy's turn, but they're already dead before getting a chance to take it. However, there are some other problems with the game, but I think it's to do with the game being on a smaller budget and just the dev team experimenting with stuff. Like, there are some agent upgrades that lack a good choice, since one choice will just be better than the other. There are also these backup android soldiers in case one of your agents get knocked out in a mission, but I have no footage of that because out of my 2 full playthroughs of this game, I never used them once. Because the game is a little too forgiving even on hard. And past the midpoint or 2/3 of the way into the game, you might be drowning in resources that you don't know what to do with. I mean, I even upgraded the useless androids. But for all those issues, I was having fun with the combat on missions and seeing these characters interact with each other. Though, what about the story? To me, it wasn't that engaging. The setup is done well enough that there's someone in the shadows giving resources to different groups in the city to bring down the government for unknown reasons. Though because of the way it's set up, it doesn't feel like you're leading the effort to uncover things. The investigation and story progression aren't much within your control, as you're just the person in charge of the team that gets sent to sort things out once someone has gotten all the clues together. So it makes the game feel a little less immersive for me. It's more linear than previous XCOM games, where you could do story stuff a little out of order, or even delay things until you felt you were ready to progress the story forward. It also doesn't help that there's no direct player character in the game, so it kinda just feels like you're just there doing stuff with no one acknowledging you. I mean, it's fine for the smaller scope of the game, but I do prefer having a bit more choice when the story makes progress in an XCOM game. The game does try to give this to you by letting you pick the order you investigate any of the 3 factions that are suspected in being behind the unrest in the city. And there will be some small story changes depending on the order you pick that will affect boss fights and a tiny bit of dialogue, which adds a little bit of replayability to the story, which is nice but not really enticing enough for me, though I have played through this game twice, but that was more to try the different squad members, since you can't recruit all the available agents in one playthrough. The leaders of the 3 factions you'll fight against are also not really used well enough in the story for the final confrontations with them to feel too memorable. Like, they get revealed over the course of an investigation and you get a bit of background on them before you face them in the faction's final story mission, though they make no random appearances in missions before that, like either trying to help their minions or maybe trying to take out one of your agents. There aren't even messages to XCOM dissing our efforts, like in XCOM 2.
What about all those civilians, Commander? Any idea how many you've lost out there?
It's a very boring build-up to actually finally facing them story-wise. The missions themselves are good gameplay-wise, with some interesting problems in their fights you need to work around. There are some minor story links between some of your agents and the bosses, though it's so underdone you might not even notice or care. And the 4th and final boss you'll face, while having some hints about and a little foreshadowing in the story, by the time you get to him and he does his villain monologue, you'll be like, who are you? And not really care. Like, my least favorite boss fight in XCOM 2 was against the Chosen Hunter, and it was still more satisfying taking down that alien edgelord than the main bad guy in this game. The only strengths the story has to me are the agents you'll recruit and seeing some of the fun interactions between them. Oh, and some bits of XCOM lore you'll see in post-mission reward screens. Like, if you are going to play this game, it's going to be more for the gameplay, which is good enough to carry it while seeing these interesting characters in action. Though I would have liked a more engaging story that does more to get me to care about the struggles going on in the city, or develop the antagonist enough for me to really want to take them down. So overall, what do I think of this game? Well, going in I was worried that the characters and changes to the XCOM formula of gameplay wouldn't click with me, but after a few playthroughs it turns out the game is pretty good and the characters are really fun. And I like the different style of XCOM combat where you need to think a few more turns ahead to get the best outcome, and using each character's unique abilities to control the turn order and remove enemies before they become a problem. Though it does stumble in some areas, it plays it a bit too safe with consequences for making mistakes, and the base management doesn't feel as engaging past the midpoint. And the agent upgrade choices were a little underwhelming for some, with an overall story that wasn't that gripping. All of which I think was more of a result of the smaller scope of the game. But Chimera Squad does introduce some interesting ideas I'd be cool with seeing in a future XCOM 3, like controlling alien soldiers you fought against in previous games. And I'm more okay now with the predefined soldier characters, as long as they still let me have some randomly generated ones. Which I think Firaxis will do if they ever get around to making XCOM 3, though that might be a while considering the stuff happening with them currently. But as for XCOM Chimera Squad, I'd give it a recommend if you're looking to try something a little different from the regular XCOM games. And that's another video in the bag. I hope you enjoyed it. Also, if you haven't already, maybe consider throwing a like or sub my way. And if you really like my videos, you can now support the channel on Patreon. Anyway, thanks for watching, see you next time.
I hate these clinics.
Why?
Because if you can rewrite someone at their most basic level, are they even the same person?
Deep.
Shut up.